Chapter 6. Depressed and Ashamed. As my apprenticeship with Joe progressed, my depression over it had not stopped. My worst fear, unlikely though it was, now became one that Estella, looking through the forge window and seeing me with black face and hands, how she would laugh at me and despise me. I think I would run away to sea, but I could not hurt Joe by doing such a contemptible thing. Nor could I disillusion his belief that being a blacksmith was a fine thing. Still, I managed not to show any of my unhappiness to Joe, for which I am very glad. When a year had passed, I could no longer fight my desire to see Estella and Miss Havisham once more. Joe was agreeable to my taking the day off, and I soon found myself in the front of a familiar gate. It took some time for me to work up the courage to ring, but finally I did so. A woman answered the bell at the gate and introduced herself as one of Miss Havisham's cousins. I'm certain that the woman would have liked to send me away, but she did not dare do so on her own, so she went to ask what to do. Miss Havisham ordered me in, and I found her and everything else about the rooms unchanged. "Well," she said, "I hope you don't want anything, for you'll get nothing." "No, Miss Havisham," I replied. "I only wanted you to know that I'm doing well in my apprenticeship, and I am grateful to you for urging it." "Well, if that's the case, fine," she said. "You may come see me now and then. Come on your birthday." When she saw me looking around, she smiled slyly and added, "You're wondering where Estella is, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am, I sort of was. I was just hoping she was well." "She is well, and gone abroad. She's being educated as a lady. She's even prettier than ever and much admired by all who see her. Do you feel you've lost her?" She broke into malicious, disagreeable laughter after this question. Wah ha 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 ha. I didn't know how to answer, but I didn't have to. She waved me out of the room, and I hurried down the stairs, out of the house, and into the road, her laughter still ringing behind me. Since I had to walk, it was night by the time I neared home. I could see that the house and the forge were brightly lit, and as I got closer, I saw a crowd of people milling about the front yard. I started to run, and the crowd parted from me when they saw who I was. A circle of people stood in the kitchen, and Joe, the village doctor, among them. As I burst into the room, they looked up and moved aside so I could see what it was they stood around. My sister lay on the kitchen floor, not moving, unconscious, and bleeding heavily from her head. Joe put his arms around me and explained, "Now, chap, we must be brave. Some villains had crept into this very kitchen and laid out Mrs. Joe with a wicked blow." "Is she alive?" I gasped. The doctor spoke up. "Alive, yes. In her right senses, probably not." By now, the police were questioning everybody, but no one had seen the attack. Someone came up from behind her and, as she stood by the stove, and dealt her a heavy blow at the back of her head. Though the investigation continued for weeks, the attacker was not found. Joe and I said nothing to one another, but each of us knew that my sister had made many enemies with her sharp tongue and her quick temper. I was not the only person in the village who had received a battering from her strong fists. We knew, but never said, that many people hated her, and that any one of them could have dealt her the blow. She was alive, but her recovery was slow. She never did recover her power of speech or her memory, and her personality was much changed. She was patient and quiet, asking with her hands, only to be made warm and comfortable by the fire, like an aged cat. Joe was much upset by this change in Mrs. Joe, but gradually he became more conscious of a quiet and pleasantness in the life that he had never experienced before. This was enhanced because Biddy came to live with us and take care of us. Biddy was an orphan girl in the village and was distantly related to Mr. Wopsle. She was wonderfully clever, and my reading and writing improved very fast under her guidance. As for her cooking, Joe and I had never tasted such delicious meals. She was gentle and kind with my sister and kept us all clean and comfortable. For the first time in my life, Joe was able to go freely to the village pub for a glass of beer and a good talk with the other men. I found myself confiding in Biddy, for she was sympathetic. But she also had sensible comments to make. So it was her, not Joe, that I confided in my dream one day. "I want to be a gentleman, Biddy," I said. She looked up from her sewing. "Because of Estella, isn't it? Because she wouldn't want you as you are?" Miserably, I nodded. Yes, ashamed for myself and Estella too.